to a well-designed business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. 500 episodes. 500 episodes, 500 conversations, thousands of aha moments, thousands of laughs, thousands of lessons. What a wild ride it has been so far. And I have to say, I have loved every darn minute of it. As yours and my 500th episode has been approaching, I've really found myself constantly reflecting on all of the people that I've met, the priceless relationships that I have, the opportunities that I've been given, and the ones that I've helped create. This is an absolute gift of this show. And it's all because one day I unpacked a microphone and walked up to the third floor of my townhouse and started talking. And you started listening. In my wildest dreams, I don't even think me, the consummate positive thinker, the ever optimistic dreamer, and the devout believer in the truth and power of a vision board, could have foreseen all of the connections, the relationships, and the joy that I have experienced because of this podcast. And of course, in addition to reflecting on the joy this experience has brought me, I also took the time to break down some of the business strategies that I have used in running this platform. You know, I say all the time, business is business. What is good for a design firm is good for a window treatment firm, is good for a landscape architect, and you better believe it's good for a podcast. I'm going to share with you the 3 or 4 principles, strategies, I just think it's not even that, keys that I really think have contributed to the success of this show. And then after that, I'm going to share with you 5 things that I, LuAnn, have learned from mostly the behind the scenes from this once #baby podcast, which is moving through its #rising podcast status and still ever striving for the level of #seasoned podcast. So the essential keys that I believe that needed to be in place in order for this endeavor, this passion project, I mean, heck, let's call it what it is. It's a calling. I think these things had to be in place. Passion, a business plan, commitment, and a village. Passion. I've told you the story of how I decided to do a podcast, that after listening to podcasts since 2006, I was finally a guest on a podcast in 2015. And the thing is, in all the years between 2006 and 2015, I never even once considered having a podcast. Never even give it a thought. Wasn't like, hey, I'd love to have one of these. No, I was just happy listening to them. But if you remember the story, the second I hung up that call, I said, oh my sweet Jesus, I need me a podcast. I actually remember it as vividly as if it happened a moment ago. My goddess voice was singing. She was loud and clear and happy and crazy. I needed a podcast. But like most of life's best things, it was a combination of the synchronicities in the universe. You know, this thing happens and then that thing happened and then that made it so this thing happened. I love these synchronicities. These are always markers for me as a business person and as a person that I'm on the right track. So I'm going to tell you this whole windy story, and I'm just going to give you fair warning. This is the kind of story that the Vin man about halfway through would look at me and go, with the most exasperated expression on his face, I must say, and say, Lou, what the heck does any of this have to do with starting a podcast? But if you believe in intuition and synchronicity and the goddess voice, hang in there with me. So it was 2013, and I was looking for several things, some emotional, some personal, and some practical. First and foremost, I wanted something that lit me up. I was 51 years old, and I was thinking, what the heck was I going to do with the next 50 years? Well, I mean, technically really 55 years, because I've been visualizing that I'm going to live happy and healthy till I'm 106. Don't ask me why. That's what my goddess said. Now, when I was young, I admired and wanted to be Og Mandino, and then later I wanted to be Tony Robbins, just the way kids today want to be Serena Williams or LeBron James. I also wanted to be Gilda Radner, but that's a whole nother story, okay? Now, I also wanted to create something that would make money, that would provide a lifestyle for me and the Vincennes that did not involve either one of us having to personally, physically be present at a customer's home selling a window treatment or an awning. Okay, no more knocking on the door for me and him. Not at that time, not in 2013, but looking into the future. I never wanted to close WindowWorks or leave WindowWorks, but we also, while I'm having this what are we going to do in another 5 or 8 or 10 years, I'm also watching Kim and Carlos and Jim and Adriana, and it was clear that they could and would be able to replace me, Vin, and Bill someday. And we needed to be ready for that transition. This is a practical thing. You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. They were growing and maturing and would naturally be looking for more responsibility and more money. And this meant we needed to make room for them to be able to achieve these things, or we would risk losing them. Okay? So you've got these two things going on. You got it I'm personally looking for something, just for the LuAnn to light her fire. Then I'm looking for something, the Lou and the Vin Man, that we don't have to show up. And then I'm also seeing the turn and the future of WindowWorks, all right? Now, on a whole nother track, one day I had this brainstorm. I was going to turn 52 the following year, and I thought, what if I wrote a book that was all the rage and sold like hotcakes, right? What would it be? What would be something that was trending and that was cool and it was interesting and the whole world would want to read it, okay? And so I started thinking about things. I was going to be 52. How about this? 52 things in 52 weeks in my 52nd year. That's a pretty killer title, isn't it? I love it. I love it still. Okay. I thought about it. I thought, there's so many people that get to their 50s and they're like, is it over? It's not, by the way. I'm just telling you. But you start to go, well, did I do everything I'm supposed to do? I know there's still a lot of life left, but what kinds of things do I have to do? And people are always looking for inspiration to do what they already know in their heart and their head that they want to do. So I thought this was a really cool little thing. It was going to speak to the boomers and this little play on the 52 things in 52 weeks in my 52nd year. So I told the Vin Man, and he was like, I love that idea. I'm like, me too. So I'm like, that's what we're going to do. So I could do this while I was doing WindowWorks. I was going to plan out all the things I always wanted to try, always wanted to challenge myself, always wanted to experience. And I was going to do one new thing every single week and write about the experience, the lesson, the aha moment. And all the men and all the women all over the world would be inspired, and we would have a movement, and we would start it. And there would be, baseball caps and shirts and bracelets, and they would say hashtag 52-52, or they'd say hashtag 52 times 3, or I don't know, maybe they would just say hashtag 52. I don't know. I would have to ask Christy and Nicole. But you see, I wouldn't have known Nicole if I hadn't got the podcast. And I probably wouldn't have known what a superstar my daughter Christy is if I hadn't had the podcast. I mean, I would have known that she's a superstar, but different when she works for you and you're just like, whoa, my kid did that, right? So anyway, I started. The very first thing that I planned to do in my 52nd year in that first week was play golf. Because you know what? The Vin Man would never, ever take me to play golf. He wouldn't. I asked him dozens of times. Over 30 years, he always said no every single time. He had given up golf before I ever met him. And he was like, I'll never play it again. And I was like, that's ridiculous. And he was like, I'm not playing. And there's not a lot that this man would not do for me, but he would not play golf. But now we were going to write a book. Well, I was. And we were both going to make a lot of money off this book. So guess who took me to play golf? Okay. And here's the thing. I did learn a really good lesson about golf. From golf, I learned, like yoga, that success is in the tiniest of adjustments. It reminds me of the way Nicole Heimer says, to find your brand in the nooks and crannies, right? A tiny, tiny rotation of the hip, the slightest turn of your wrist. These affect where the ball goes, right? So, like Nicole says, your email signature, your 404 message, your hero picture, we don't think they make a big difference, the colors, the fonts that they use, but they do. They make a big difference. And the thing is, back then when I played golf, it reminded me that it's the littlest things. And now with the podcast, that lesson has been reinforced by Nicole. So I thought that was pretty cool. Then the next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to take surfing lessons because I've always wanted to do it. All right. And again, you don't stop to train and do these things. So now I had the perfect excuse. So we planned a vacation to Puerto Rico. That's the things that he would do because he thought I was going to write this amazing book are really funny to think about now. But anyway, so I took the surfing lessons, and you know what I learned from the surfing lessons is that you have to stand on the board before you can ride the wave. Yep. I remember learning that. I kept a little journal of this because, of course, it was going to turn into a book. And that's what I wrote. You have to stand on the board before you ride the wave. And then, as I was reflecting on the show, it reminded me now of Taylor Spoutman's episode where she was riding the waves of TV shows and literally multi-million-dollar projects, but she had not first learned to stand first on her own 2 feet. It was a painful lesson for her, and I know that she felt like she was in a tidal wave. But now Taylor has learned to stand first, and she is ready to ride that wave of success, which I know is coming her way. So, all right, next thing that I did. We went to Las Vegas, and I did a 46-mile bike ride through Las Vegas, through Summerlin, and wherever else 46 miles takes you away from the Strip, okay? From this ride, okay, I learned that you need a plan and you need to pace yourself, okay? See, what happened was I didn't have either. I go out, there's probably 800 people. I'm not even thinking about anything other than just starting and riding, okay? I was riding with the pack for about the first 20 miles. Everything was really good. Then the next thing I know, the riders start to thin out. Who's going faster, who's going slower. And about the 20-mile mark, I find myself with maybe about 6 or 8 other bikers. And then all of a sudden, another mile or so, they stopped together for a rest. I didn't realize that they were friends. So I kept going because they weren't my friends and they didn't ask me to stop and I didn't need to stop. But then I realized I didn't know where I was going. You see, I had not downloaded the app on my phone. I had not gotten the real map. I mean, if you know me in real life, this does not surprise you one bit. And Michelle Williams, I'm talking to you, LuAnn's world. Okay. So anyway, I'm like mildly like, what am I going to do? I'm not really worried. I mean, it's daylight. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But it was kind of odd that I thought, you didn't really think this through, did you? I'm like, no, I didn't. I just got on my bike. So finally I'm riding. And I see a guy way up ahead. So I pick up my speed so that I can get kind of next to him and fall in and sort of follow him, right? And trying not to be like all weird about it. And then after a little bit, he slows his ride a little in step with me and he starts to chat. How do you like the ride? Yada, yada. And after a few minutes, I admit to him that I actually have no idea of the course. And so basically, buddy, don't mind me if I follow you. Okay? And then what's so funny is he showed me on the road these painted arrows. Like he goes, oh, I'll show you the arrows up here in case we get separated. And then he oh, see right there? And I'm like, no. But, we're riding our bikes, right? And I didn't see them. And then he tried maybe two or three times, and I never saw them. And I didn't want to be like, yes, I'm so ridiculously stupid that 4 times you've tried to show them to me and I still don't see them. The thing is, I didn't know what I was looking for, so I didn't see them. And I never did see them the rest of the race, by the way. I mean, it wasn't a race, the rest of the ride, by the way, which was kind of weird. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So we go along. And sometimes he's going faster than me, and I have to work harder to keep up with him, okay? And then we're even, and then we're not. And the thing is, at one point, when I sort of catch up with him and I'm a little winded, I mentioned to him, I wonder how long it takes to ride 46 miles. And he says to me, well, it depends on what pace you've set for yourself. And I said, pace? And I thought to myself, really? He does not know me. And I said, I didn't even know what the route was, let alone what pace I'm going. All right. And he explained that he decided before the race he would ride at 15 miles per hour, whether it was hills, flat, winding road, no matter what. And because of that, he knows that he will be done the race in exactly 3 hours, like 3 hours and 8 minutes or something. And I thought, well, that's so genius. Okay. So before this, though, the thing was that I was riding along and I had no idea would I be riding for 3 hours or 5 hours. I mean, honestly, I never gave it a thought. I know Michelle Williams is hysterically laughing right now. Okay. Now, and you also know me too. You know I'm never going to pass the math section on an SAT. I mean, you're probably thinking, any of you who can do math in your head, LuAnn, just divide it up. But the truth is that as long as I've been a bike rider, and I would go 18-mile rides, 20-mile rides, all of those things, I've never had an odometer or a thing because I have a watch. It's like, you know what? And then I would take my car later and see how many miles it was, and then I would set my route. So, I was in a different state, a different thing, might have taken a few more, things, but I didn't. And so the thing is that once I knew that we were going to ride at 15 miles per hour and that we were going to be done at 12, it just made the ride so much easier. It wasn't like, my goodness, do I have 100 years left? It was like, nah, I got an hour and a half left, or I got an hour left, whatever it was. Okay. So the other thing was that the pace was an interesting thing. And I remember having this lesson walking back from the race to the hotel, because I remember thinking to myself, that was so key. And it is such a key learning lesson, is to think about the pace that you're doing something, the pace that you're growing your business, the pace that you're filling your pipeline. I mean, I didn't think in those terms of your pipeline then, believe me, I didn't. But I thought about it in terms of window works, the pace that you hire people in. The pace that you take on new projects and different things like that. And the thing was that I realized that it was important. And even though I am a shoot from the hip type of a person, and if I had never run into him and I had never figured out the pace and I had never done all that stuff, I would have been fine. But it did make the ride much more enjoyable. And the other thing that was interesting is that it was actually, in some ways, it made it harder to do the ride, which is also the same with business, because I never would have kept a steady 15 miles per hour on the uphill. And I wouldn't have kept it on the downhill either, because on the downhill, you could go faster. On the uphill, I would have gone much slower. And in the end, they might not have leveled each other out. And I remember on the uphills thinking, I've got to keep going at 15. And of course, I didn't have the speedometer, odometer, whatever the hell it's called, but he was riding right ahead of me. And so he was my pacer. And it was hard to keep the 15 miles on the uphill, particularly. And if I had let myself slow down every single time there was a hill, that race, I keep calling it a race, please, it was not a race. That ride could have been a 4-hour ride. And that would have really stunk, And so what it is when I think about it, it's the lesson of just stay the course. Just stay your pace. Even if it's hard, get up and do it again. Even if you're in the middle of a hard project, don't avoid the hard conversation. Don't avoid going to the project. Don't avoid sitting at your desk doing what you're doing. Just keep doing it. Just show up every day. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how you finish. And I ultimately finished that really strong. And I felt content, and I had huge thanks in my mind for this stranger on the road. Okay. And the other one I've noticed who has this, Sarah Daniele. I have, because of the podcast, been able to watch her grow my Doma studio up close and personal behind the scenes. And this lady, and it's so funny, she's so young. I think she's 32 years old. Like, I almost fell over when I found out this year how old she was. She just is so poised and so mature. And she started my Doma studio from an idea and an Excel spreadsheet. And she has just continued to show up every day and just keep adding features and listening to ideas from you, the designer, and from, collaborators and other vendors, and take them in and say, yep, good idea. Nope, not good idea. Yes, we can add that to our pace. Not now. We've got to wait. How long did you wait for QuickBooks, right? But she added it when they were ready, in their pace, when they could handle it. And I just have to say, I really, really, really admired her. And the thing about it is I think about, such a young woman, and she's at this 4 years now, to be walking in and facing an intimidating boardroom full of VCs. She's fighting that uphill climb for funding in that moment. And she has maneuvered the twisty curves of trial and error that comes with writing a software program. And you know what? She has just really steadfastly kept the pace every single month, year after year, every mile along the way. She is always learning, improving, and always running her race. So I just, marry those two lessons together, okay? All right, so what's the deal? Why didn't I write this book, right? I had this idea. The thing was, in the end, I had no passion for the writing of this topic. I really didn't. I had a ton of passion for the doing of the stuff, okay? But every time I sat down to write the lessons that I learned, I just couldn't muster the mojo. All right. Do I think it was a bad idea? No, I actually don't, especially saying it again now. I'm like, too bad I'm not 52 again. I love the idea. And by the way, if one of you wants to snatch it from me, be my guest. Okay. Maybe you'll shout me out in your forward. Okay. But for me, I was not passionately driven to write that book, no matter how profound the experiences and the lessons that I was having were. Okay. You see, and because I did probably 12 or 15 of them before. What happened was I finally had I did it about almost 4 months, something every week. And I literally every week would contemplate what was my aha, what was my lesson. And I had legitimate ones every single time. But at 3 months in, I was still doing the things, and I had nothing but notes, and not like really the guts of a chapter notes, just the highlight, like for the Las Vegas thing, I wrote, have a plan, set a pace, and the thing was that at 4 months in, I realized 5 months, whatever it was, if I hadn't written a bloody word yet, I really didn't have the mojo for it. And that's the thing. You have to have the passion, right? So what's the tie back to starting the podcast, right? The thing was, one of my 52 things was that I pitched myself to be on a podcast because, I was like, that would be fun. I mean, the thing was, what was surprising for me was I thought I would come up with 52 things that I was dying to do, like in 10 minutes. And I came up with about 20 in like 10 minutes. And then for like 2 or 3 more weeks, it took me like, I got like 5 more. And then it was like, my God, do you really not have 52 things? Because everybody who knows me is like, I'm always like, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to try that, right? And so the thing was, I thought, I listen to podcasts. I wonder if I could pitch myself to be on a podcast. And so then I joined Harrow, and then I pitched to be on the podcast. And then when I hung up that Skype call, the heck with that book. I didn't even feel guilty about it anymore. I didn't worry about it. I didn't think about it because I knew, as sure as I was sitting there, I was meant to do a podcast, and I had absolutely no passion for writing that particular book. And you see, this is a true passion for me. I love meeting new people every week in real life and virtually. It doesn't make any difference to me. I love, love, love that every single one of us has something of value to share. All right. Look, we know that not every single person who has been on the show is a Forbes or a Inc., business genius, right? But every single person to a one has taught us something, one thing, one idea that has helped us in some way to improve, or helped us to strive for something that we knew we needed to do, or has just let us know that we're not alone in the struggles that we face as entrepreneurs. Am I right? I know I am. Like, I don't have to ask you, but I did. But I know I am. And this is my juice. Asking you and finding out, what is your superpower? What turn on the Rubik's Cube can you share with us to unlock this mystery of running a business? Okay? Now, I just think, just as a side, I think it's really hysterical. So you know how I read the Dear Abby column and the horoscope every morning, right? Today, the day that I'm writing the show, this is what the horoscope says. You've selected interesting people and highlighted their best qualities, weaving together truly inspired social life. Like, are you kidding me? Okay, like, what? You've selected interesting people and you've highlighted their best qualities and you've woven them together to a truly inspired social life. I would say the podcast is a social life, wouldn't you? I mean, oh my God, you can't make this stuff up. How crazy is this? All right. So I was writing the show. I took a break, had a cup of tea, read the paper, and that was there. And I just thought, oh, okay. Yeah, go back to writing. So this is the thing, the synchronicities, right? It's the one thing is the other thing, and that had to happen in order for this had to happen. And then I sit down and I read that thing, and I'm just like, yeah. That's what this is. This is my passion. So, big, big lesson. I hope that you're working in your passion. You know why? Because when you are, even the hard days are a joy. That's how it is for me. It's an absolute joy. All right? So, if you love kitchen design, do kitchen design. If you hate kitchen design, stop saying yes to kitchen projects. Whatever your passion is, you deserve to work in it, period. And it is critical to your success, because I have the technical skill to write that book, 52 Things in 52 Weeks, in my 52nd year. I have the technical skill to write it, and I had the lessons, but it would not have been a good book because I would not have had passion behind it. So I knew when I hung up that phone and I wanted to do a podcast, it had to be something that I was passionate about. And I am passionate about talking about business. I can do it in my sleep. And the Vin Man will tell you, often I do. Now, second thing is, you do have to have a business plan. You've heard me say how I sat the Vin Man down to pitch the podcast to him. And well, I think you know well enough by now, you know I needed cold hard facts. I needed to know how much to invest in setting up a recording studio, how much would audio editors cost, how about website development, how about purchasing apps and plugins and paying people to do show notes and newsletters, and how about how much time would I be away from WindowWorks? Then, how would I monetize it? Sponsors, books, speaking, events. What would they be? When would they be launched? Real facts, tinged with hope and a prayer. That's what I showed them. I had it all laid out. But the one thing, the one real, very real expectation for our return on investment was this. If none of those things happened, if God forbid, I didn't write the book that I was passionate about writing. I didn't end up earning speaking engagements. I did not end up launching events. If the one thing happened that I believed would happen, it would be that this would be a marketing vehicle for WindowWorks, that it would bring more designers to WindowWorks. And this, in the end, was the final determination for moving ahead. WindowWorks would fund it as a marketing expense, and at the end of the year, if it covered its cost to be open, we would look at doing it again the following year. Just like taking an ad in a magazine, we would spend it, we would track it, and we would evaluate it. And in reality, at the 1 year mark, finally, at the very last month, we turned the corner on the investment, which is why we continued. And when I was writing about this today, I thought about and it reminded me of Jenny and Greg Madden's show. They explained that they set aside enough money for a very specific number of months, to cover their personal expenses at home and the business, I believe, but definitely at home. And they decided if at that time the firm wasn't meeting the margins it needed in order for Greg to continue to be employed by the business, he would leave and go back to his finance career. They had a plan, they tracked it, and they agreed on the actions that they would take based on the results that they got. No willy-nilly, no bleeding from a main artery if it wasn't working, and no blame and no arguments. Clear decisions based on facts and upfront agreements. This is what you have to do. This is what you have to have in place with your partner, your employees, your trades, and most of all, your clients. Establish what you will do and what you will not do. Clarity creates calm, and it creates purpose, because when you make a plan, you are much more likely to get where you want to be. So, have a plan. Commitment. Commitment, an unrelenting, single-minded, focused commitment to getting it done, whatever it takes. Okay? I knew from the beginning that I was going to run this podcast like a business. And as a business owner, I'm always asking myself, why did this work? Why did this not work? Where did we go right? Where did we drop the ball? Believe me, every business is always a work in progress. Always. There is no such thing as I have arrived. Even WindowWorks at 38 years old, we are again, right now, revising systems, implementing new strategies for management and growth and for stability. I don't believe our businesses are ever cooked. To be successful, you need to be open to learning. You need to always be able to assess what you are doing. You may need to pivot, and you are going to take on risk. Okay? So, commitment is 100% necessary. Commitment is showing up on schedule, prepared to do what you said you would do, and doing the work even when you haven't seen the results yet, right? This part's not easy, believe me. And I know, you see, because I go through this. I went through it with WindowWorks. I'm going through it now with the podcast, but what I know is the way you approach things makes a difference. And commitment to the people in your world, to your agreements you make, to the contracts you sign are important, and they must be honored. I look at this podcast as a contract with you. The show comes out every Tuesday and Friday. Whether I'm traveling, whether my grandbabies are being born, through my dad passing and Vin's mom passing, through it all. I realize that other podcasts skip weeks, they take hiatuses. That's okay for them. Me, because you show up, I show up. All right? Now, do you remember my friend Corey Damon Jenkins when he was on the show a year or so ago and he talked about the 779 doors, or 749 doors? I have to look it up. The point was that he talked about he knocked on 779 doors one by one to build his business. Now, Corey's going to be back on the show in a couple of weeks, all right? And we talk about this again because it is such a powerful story of the commitment it takes to build a business, all right? I know that his life on Instagram looks fabulous and fun. I know, I see it too. But we, you and me, we know how he did it. We know that he did it door by door because Corey came on this show and he shared with us his heart, okay? And he shared how he made a commitment to building a business. And you need that. I need it in building this podcast. And if you're serious about building your business, you need the commitment too, okay? A village. It may be an overused phrase, but it doesn't make it any less true. Running a business takes tenacity, courage, smarts, and a team of trusted advisors, coaches, consultants, and friends. You know, in my first book, I encouraged you to assemble your dream team. The people who have expertise where you don't, the people who have experience where you don't, and the people who you can rely on when the going gets tough, because it's going to. I have been absolutely blessed by the most amazing village of the brands who believe in the show and make it possible to bring it to you. From WindowWorks itself, who believed from the beginning, and to Kravit, the very first sponsor, who took a shot on me before I even launched and have stayed with me and you for the entire ride. And we also have My Doma Studio, Article, Kirsch, Revelwoods, and so many others throughout the years. Not a chance that this happened without them. And then there's the other village, those who have supported me, cheered me, counseled me, and dug in with me when things got hairy. And it has been through this village of guests, sponsors, co-authors, and you that I have grown and learned so many freaking things in the last 4 years, okay? So here are the 5 lessons I've learned. Not necessarily from a conversation on the show, sometimes yes, but lessons that I've learned because if I didn't have the show, these people or situations would not have crossed my path or in the lesson that they crossed the path in, okay? So, number 1, just because you can do something absolutely doesn't mean you should be the one to do that something. While doing LuAnn Live, I learned a really valuable lesson from my cousin and co-author Eileen Hahn. You may not know that I had only finally, ultimately, truly decided to launch the event in March that previous December. It was insanity in plain English. I mean, honestly, it was. You see, the live event was on the business plan back from the beginning, but it was slated for 2020. And one day in late October, I thought, why were we launching our co-authored book at the podcast birthday party? We should move the live event up to 2019 and launch it at that. And I did, as I always do. I went right to my daughter, Christy Rocha, and to Nicole Heimer. These are my voice of reason people. I hope you have at least one voice of reason person in your life. Or maybe if you're conservative by nature, maybe you need a crazy pants dreamer like me in your life. I don't know. All I know is we all need the yin and the yang. So as per typical with these 2 rock stars, within moments, I had a list of all the practical things that I had never thought of that we would need to do in order to launch in that short a period of time. And as per typical, I said, so we can do it then, right? And we did. But it was intense, especially because we were also still writing the book during the same period. I mean, go big or go home, right? Anyway, to say it wasn't all sunshine and roses, the planning and the coordinating and the pulling that off with absolutely never having done anything like that before would be somewhat accurate. And as we got down to the wire, crazy things just kept happening. The book publisher and I were not exactly seeing eye to eye for one. Last-minute sponsors wanted to join in, which was amazing, but it meant that we had to keep doing revisions of the printed materials and the banners at the last minute. And as every day brought a new quote-unquote emergency, one day I'm on the phone with my cousin Eileen, half laughing, half out of my mind, and I'm saying to her, I know I'm really good under pressure, and I know I can handle it, but holy moly, why in the world do I need to prove it to the universe every single day? And she said, what was going on? She asked me. And I told her how the most recent revision of the book wasn't properly done. And now, because it had to go back again, I didn't even know if I would have the copies that I needed for LuAnn Live in time for LuAnn Live. I mean, how do you launch a book? Fly 12 co-authors in for that launch and not actually have the book. All right. So she asked me who had been tasked to proof this particular section. I said, are you kidding me? Everybody was so slammed. I couldn't ask one single soul to do it, so I did it myself. I said, I'm looking in the mirror on this one. I blew it. And you know what she said to me? I'm standing there telling her, I didn't take my time. I didn't sit down at the kitchen table. I didn't do it at 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm most effective with this type of thing. And I'm going on. And you know what she said, Lou? Your mistake wasn't in the proofing of the book. Your mistake was in the doing of the proofing of the book yourself. You are not the person for this task. You are a big picture person. Your superpower is seeing the whole game, seeing the vision, and getting people on board with that vision. This task is for a person with exceptional attention to detail. You are not that lady. Going forward, never take on tasks like this again, especially when they are this important to you. And I said, I know it's not my superpower. It's not like, I'm 12 and I have no idea what my flaws are. But, I'm a grown-up. It's my blasted book, for crying out loud. I should have buckled down and did it the right way. She said, no, ma'am, no way. She said, expecting you to be able to do this sort of task with excellence in an exceptional manner is like expecting you to be able to slam dunk a basketball or to sing an opera. You are not gifted with these skills. And what's more, LuAnn, she said, you have people around you who are. I'm going to tell you what, I swear to goodness, I think I heard angels singing. I really did. It was such an aha moment for me because I have beaten myself up so many times over the years because I didn't want to do the details, because I procrastinated on doing details, because I did them and I didn't do them well. Any one of these three scenarios would make me crazy. And the thing is, of course, I'm capable of doing detail work if I need to. I mean, have you ever measured, quoted, and ordered a 5 or 6 figure drapery project? It's insanity. But that's what always screwed me up. I figured if I could do it now and then I should always be able to do it. And you know, Vinny has a saying, he says, even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. Well, that's what I've been with highly detailed work. Okay, a blind squirrel. Sometimes I did it and sometimes I didn't. It's not pretty when I do it. And the thing is that this revelation was so amazing. It was so liberating. Inside, I have always chastised myself because I thought I was just being lazy. But this year, because of this podcast, Eileen taught me otherwise. Amen. That's all I can tell you. Amen, amen, amen. Now, I happily pay people to do the details, especially when money, reputations, or relationships are on the line. I want them done right, so I get the heck out of the way. All right? Do you have something that you keep doing? You keep doing it even though you keep hating it, and you keep doing it with less than stellar results? Work in your genius and hire others to fill in your gaps. Believe me, do this and save yourself the money you would have spent on a therapist. I promise. All right? Number 2, I complain about technology, but it is the reason that we feel like we're friends for real, especially when we finally meet in real life. We have been amazingly gifted because of our podcast village. Our podcast village supports us, not just in our business, but it supports us as people, as humans. Because of Instagram and Facebook, we feel like we know each other, right? Like we actually talk to each other. You have become my true friends. When I was in the hospital this summer, the number of messages and emails I got telling me it's okay to slow down, do less shows, do whatever it takes to be well. We'll be there with you, for you. It was pretty incredible, I have to say. You are pretty incredible. It's also been a great privilege how you have let me into your lives too. I know more than ever that Instagram is not real life. I have learned that you have buried your children. I've learned that you've lost a parent way too early. I've learned that you've come from other countries and struggled to not only build a new life, but build a new business at the same time. I've learned that you have family members battling cancer, scleroderma, depression, and other unthinkable illnesses. Together, we learned how much our friend, Wendy Glaister, has overcome just to be standing, let alone to be thriving and happy in her new life. I've learned that when you've come up to me and told me that when you hear me talk and you hear me tell you how awesome my mom is, it makes you teary sometimes because you didn't have that kind of mom. But then you've also said to me, somehow in some crazy magical way, I have filled this hole for you, even just a little bit. You imagine that I am your cheerleader and that I believe in you. And do you know what? I do. You got this. One day at a time, one foot in front of the other. And this past December, we lost our dear friend Liza Jones. Liza was one of my early podcast listeners, one of the early ones who let me know she was listening. Liza would encourage me, and she would email me suggestions of who to invite on the show, pointing out people of note that she knew we would all love. Liza even joined the first class I ever offered, Money, Mindset, and Sales, the class I did with my friend Nancy Ganzekaufer. And Liza ultimately became my first ever one-on-one coaching client. I became aware that Liza was battling cancer the around the anniversary, the first birthday party of the podcast, the first year of the podcast, she had emailed me to say she was going to drive from Virginia to New York City to be at the podcast birthday party. And then weeks later, she emailed again and said that she'd been undergoing chemo and she had been hopeful that she'd have the strength to come, but that she did not. That was when I learned that Liza had cancer. This would have been the first time that we would have met in real life. Thankfully, after that, I did spend time with Liza many times after that. We had two particularly fun times. One was after the party for the third birthday party of the podcast, and then the other was last May with the Design House and SKS Signature Kitchen Suite in Napa. Liza Jones was a rare and beautiful soul, and I know I'm joined by many who also miss her terribly. The third thing that I've learned is I love connecting people. I mean, not just like it. I love it. I love it. I love introducing. I loved, when we went to LuAnn Live, there was so much of it that was so exciting. But what I really loved was being able to watch you be able to meet each of these experts that you had been listening to on the show at that point for 3 years. Okay. I just thought it was so awesome. And to hear the stories that came from that and the relationships that you built with them because you met them in person in real life, it was just so much fun. And I also love being able to invite outstanding guests that I've had on the show to be on panel discussions and see their excitement as the crowd lines up to ask them questions afterwards. This past High Point Market, Sarah Brennan, Wendy Wallace-Chalk, and Mr. Incredible Don Ricardo killed it at High Point on that panel, talking about how they've packaged their services so that they can be clear and sell them to their clients easily. For them, it works, okay? There's not a debate on like it or not like it, okay? But because of this, Sarah and I launched the course, Process Leads to Profits. It's the same with Vita. We met each other because I started coaching her. And then as I got to know her, I could see how she could help me help you learn about window treatments. You guys had been emailing me and saying, maybe I should talk about window treatments. And I was like, I don't think I have the mojo. And then my relationship with Vita grew and I was like, I could do it with you. It's so much fun. And so now not only do we have WTF series, we have the Profit with Window Treatments course. Okay. I just love this rush of brainstorming. When one idea grows, it morphs and evolves. And I love it when someone tells me, hey, I reached out to so-and-so because of you, and now we have this XYZ thing going on. I just love it, love it, love it. And I've learned so much because of the podcast that so many people cross my path and so many ideas cross my path that it's become almost every single week in some shape or form. I hear myself saying, I got somebody that can help you with that. I know somebody that you could help right now. Do you mind giving a hand to somebody if I connect you guys by a phone call? I mean, it's just awesome. So it's been such a great pleasure to have this experience. Number 4, synchronicity. Okay, I mentioned that a lot when I was talking earlier about the Las Vegas and when starting the podcast and everything. But do you remember when I learned what that was? It was when I interviewed Jan Bowen. Jan is an expert and a consultant who, among other skills, teaches people how to cultivate their intuition. And what I learned is, through my upbringing and all the reading I did as a kid on the topic of sales and positive thinking and visualization, that I was intuitively doing the things that she teaches. And the thing is, it was mind-blowing for me to learn all the things I did without thinking about them and all the beliefs I had that I never thought I made them up, but I didn't know that they had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like they just became part of me. And it was so cool to find out that these things were real. I've always trusted my goddess voice. So I never actually cared if I made them up or not. And I never needed anyone to tell me that the way I processed my thoughts was valid or not. But it was extremely validating to hear Jan describe in a concrete way a topic that has been in my head and my heart and my goddess voice, okay? Meeting Jan, I learned sometimes you know things even if you don't know what they are. This one might not make a lot of sense. I mean, it's in my head. This is too, okay? But it was a huge aha for me, and I'm sharing you my aha, so there it is, okay? All right. Number 5. We're on to number 5. You are meant to do what you are doing when you are doing it. Okay, one caveat, as long as your goddess voice says to do it, okay? Because your goddess voice is not capable of lying. The goddess voice isn't like the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. Your inner voice can only speak truth. You just have to listen to it, okay? So my last and final aha is that you're meant to do what you are doing when you are doing it, okay? So I have learned through this podcast there is a season and a time for everything. I absolutely know that if there was a such thing as podcasts, 20 years ago, that I would have, well, there was one 20 years ago. I was listening, right? Let's go back 30 years then. I know I would have loved to do it at any point in my life, meaning interviewing people, the live events, the writing the books, the business coaching, all of it. I've always felt, I never knew what it was. I never knew and never had the vision for the vehicle of the podcast, okay? But I always felt like something like this was in there, okay? And I can't tell you how many times over the last 4 years I have known that even though I've always wanted something like this, that if it ever presented itself before now, I would not have done it as well as I'm doing it now. Okay? So what I mean is I'm meant to be doing it now. If I had an opportunity to do it even 10 years ago, it would not have been what it is now. Okay? So from a practical standpoint, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, WindowWorks could not have, I could not have stepped out of WindowWorks for a minute a day, a week to travel, to do anything. There was nothing. There was no way. But Kim came 12 years ago, and little by little, Kim became LuAnn. Kim is better than I ever was. That's what's so great about Kim. She, I taught her every single thing about the WindowWorks way, our culture, the way we treat our clients, the way we treat our designers. And she has all of that. Plus, she has a design aesthetic that I could have never even touched. So without a Kim, I could have never done it, right? And then how about another thing, like raising kids? I never could have been the kind of mom that I chose to be. The brownie mom, the PTA mom, the softball mom, the class mom. That's the kind of mom I was. That was my choice. And I would not wanted to trade that for something else. And it was difficult as it was to have a business and be all those things, but not a business that requires travel and social media and all that other stuff, right? So they would have been lost in the shuffle, and that would not have been good, okay? So, but here is the other really huge reason why I know that I'm meant to do this now, and why I want you to know when you're really supposed to do something, it's the time to do it. And if you think you should do it and your goddess is saying no, then it's not time yet. And if you think you should do it, but you don't know what it is, then it's not time yet. And if you think you should do it, but you don't know how to do it yet, maybe it's not time yet, okay? Because the universe lines it all up when it's time, okay? So here's my big aha on one of the real reasons why, on top of all those practical reasons, that I believe that the time is right now. I would say one of the most said things on iTunes reviews, in emails to me, in social media to me, is you ask the question in my head. I would say if we added it up as many times as you have said that to me, that's probably the number one thing, okay? And I have to say, when you guys started saying that to me, first I was like, oh, that's cool. That's great. And then I was like, oh, okay, so don't overthink then. If the question's in your head, Lu, then ask the question. Like, this is working. This is what they like. This is good, right? And then, of course, being me, I have to sit back and think about, why do I always ask the question that's in their head? How do I always know the question that's in their head? Why is that? And I have to say, I've come up with the 2 reasons that I think I'm able to do this. The first is, in the moment when the question comes to my head, I think to myself, if you're in business, 38 years at this point and you don't know the answer to it, it's a pretty good shot that a lot of people listening don't know the answer. So yeah, go ahead and ask the question, even if it sounds silly to you, right? Because you hear me sometimes, I'm like, I don't know, this might be pretty obvious, but I got to ask it anyway, right? And I'm just like, if I don't know it, you probably don't know it. There's always somebody that does, but it's just, if I've got 38 years experience and I don't know it, right? So, and then the other one is, the other side of that coin actually is, there's so many times when I actually know the answer to the question, or at least I have a feeling of the answer to the question. And that's because I have gone through whatever it is the guest is talking about. And so often, most guests are kind of nervous when they're on the show until they get settled in a little bit. But you know how it is. You're not sure of what you're saying, and you're thinking of so many things. They probably have notes in front of them. And sometimes I'll say, "Oh, how did you do this?" And they'll be like, "Well, I just this, and then that happened." And I'm like, there's a little bit in between there. Let's break that up, right? And it's like, I think what I'm trying to tell you is that the number of times that I have had boots on the ground, knocking on somebody's door, going in cold to somebody that I've never met before, and starting a sales presentation. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of times, not 1 or 2 or 50 or 100, tens of thousands of times. Okay, that's the truth. And so that gives me this huge body of experience, of conversations, of nuance, and of the kind of objections and the kind of things that people say to you. Add to that the growing of the business with Vinny and marketing it and, trial and error and going through recessions and, really getting kicked on our butts the first time and almost losing the business the first time. What happens is, sit there and think about it. That's like a ton of experience. And so when a question comes to mind, I can take it to that next level. It's if you give me an answer and I feel like there's more there because I know there is in my experience, I can gently tug at them and push at them and gnaw at them, go further, go more, go deeper, tell us more. Or, as I said, if it really is new to me, there's been so many new lessons to me on this show. 500 people I've spoken to, my goodness. And it's just like, oh, I didn't know that. That's so fun. That's so cool. Tell me more. And so I know that, look, I would have brought the crazy pants energy, right? Whether I was 20 years old or 50 years old. And I would have brought the insane curiosity, 20 years old or 50 years old, that innate curiosity, that innate want to know how it works. But I know that it's this big, long lifetime in business that brings the depth that I think is the secret sauce. And that's my fifth and final lesson of the show. And it's a work in progress, folks. I'm going to have another lesson tomorrow morning. I promise you. Okay. I just, these many years of business and that's this much experience, it just gives me the confidence to go deeper so that we all learn the very most we can from every single show. All right. So the bottom line is, on this epic day of my 500th episode, my heart is filled with gratitude. It is the one word that keeps bubbling up. My gratitude for you, my listener, is so deep and so profound. I'm not sure you can truly grasp it or that I can adequately express it, but it is real and it is genuine. I feel so at home behind this mic. I feel energized with every podcast interview, and I feel so much hope for what we still have to create together, this village, our village. All right? And I want to just say, speaking of gratitude, okay, there's a lot of people that help me make this podcast. My podcast audio editors, Room 2 Productions, WindowWorks, the team there, Nicole, Christy Hausler from Team Podcast, my assistant Lisa. There's just so many people that help to bring this show together. And I just have to say, thank you to all of those people that help us do it, okay? It is very much a team effort. And I just also want to say to you that thinking about gratitude and thinking about how often you share it with me and how much it has meant to me and how often it has given me the juice to keep going and to get up again and to try again or to do something in a different or a better way, I thought about it. What if we could start a little frenzy of gratitude in honor of the 500th episode? How many guests have really created an aha moment for you? Maybe you have only one, maybe you have 5. But that moment, I mean, you've written to me about these moments, about these lessons that people have given you from the show. Not me. You have thanked me over and over and over, and I am so grateful. But how about the 500 people out there? Okay? So why don't we do this? Why don't we today on Instagram, and if you're listening to this a couple days later, no expiration date on it, let's start a little frenzy of gratitude. Why don't you, in this Instagram post for this show, tag the person, the guest, who has helped you in some way, whether it was virtually by listening to the show, whether you ended up working with them or you ended up meeting them at an event and you just came up and said hello to them because of the episode. Tag them, tag me, and tell them. Actually, should you put it in your own stories? Maybe that's what we should do. Put it in your own stories, right, on Facebook and Instagram, and tag them and tag me, and tell them what they mean to you. Tell them the lesson that you got from them. I would love, 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 love to read that. That would be so much fun because I have known the great gift of hearing your gratitude, but it would be so awesome for these people to hear it too. Okay? Make someone's day today, just like you've made mine every single day for the last 4 years. Okay? Take the people who are the 500 episodes and put the name to it and thank them. That would be awesome. I would love it if you did that. And in closing, thank you. Truly, thank you. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnn'sNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.